in West Texas, there's a famous oil field called the Yates, Y-A-T-E-S, pool. And during the Depression, this was a ranch owned by a man named Yates. He raised sheep. And during the Depression, he wasn't able to keep up with his payments for his ranch, nor have enough enough money to pay for food for his children. So he was on government subsidy. And one day he got a knock on the door from an oil company, and they asked him that they'd like to drill oil in his land. At a little more than 1,000 feet, which is incredible for oil, they started giving 80,000 barrels a day. And to this day, 30, 40, 50 years later, they're still producing 100,000 barrels of oil. Can you imagine? Imagine that, if that was your land. He has, the one who owns the land owns also the mineral and oil rights to it. Here's a man that had all the oil in North America, and yet he was living in poverty because he did not know what he owned. He didn't possess it. And that's what Jesus is talking about, my friends, having a treasure. But not only finding the treasure, but possessing it. Possessing it. What's it mean to possess a treasure? You know, it's interesting. I don't know how many of you watched the British Open with golf, and Rory McIlroy won. It's a young guy from Ireland. If you ever listen to his interview, my friends, he's a wonderful kid. But you know, last year, he's won 2 tournaments this year. Last year he had one of the worst years of his life. And he said to the reporters, he said, you know, my head is thinking better this year. He said, you know, when I get up in the morning, I want to think about how to improve my game. And when I go to bed at night, I'm thinking about how to improve my game. And you know, I'm sure what he was telling the press was, you know, there was so much negativity surrounding Rory McIlroy last year and how poorly he was doing, it got into his brain and it affected his game. You know, my friends, there's so much negativity with our faith today and our culture. It gets into our brain. It gets into our brain. And then our faith slowly fades away. That's why it's so important to do spiritual reading, to pray every day. You know, if you think about God on Sunday mornings and don't think about him for the rest of the week, that's no faith, my friends. It's no faith. Because it's not impacting your life. That's what Rory McIlroy said. I had to fix my thinking. I had to take what was in here and get all that negativity out so my game was better. It's the same with our faith. We need to think about it through the course of the week in order for us to impact our lives. For 55 years, the bells in the churches in Czechoslovakia stood silent. The communist regime forbid religion. And the priest, Reverend Father Schneelberger, went into hiding because his life was at risk. And then in 1989, when the Berlin Wall went down, he went to his old church and started ringing his bells. And then he put a sign on the outside of his church and he simply said, "The Lamb wins. The Lamb wins." We don't need to be apologetic about our faith, my friends. Our faith is amazing. It survives anything. Look, it's the only thing that survived communism. They tried so hard to stamp out our faith, and yet it survives. Because it's essential, my friends, and we need it. We need it, and it does so much for us. There's a young black African-American girl from Birmingham, and her goal in life was to become a figure skater and a concert pianist. And as she was growing up, those were not good dreams to have for a young African-American girl. Those were white people's things, to play the piano as a concert pianist and to be a dancer. So every year of her life, up to her college years, she faced racism and all the problems attached with it. She couldn't even go into a department store and use the dressing room because of her color. She said this: "It was her faith in God that made a difference. She trusted Him, and she approached each setback, each insult, each failure as a part of the wonderful script that God was writing for her." She never made it as a professional figure skater. She never was renowned as a concert pianist, although she's very talented in that. But on September 11th, 2001, a voice in the telephone informed President George Bush that the United States was under attack. It was the voice of a woman who at that time may have been the most powerful woman in America. She informed the president of the attack and that she implemented emergency procedures to protect the president and his staff. And then she went and turned to the leaders of the world and told them that the US government is still up and running. You all know who that is. You know who that is? Condoleezza Rice. Condoleezza Rice. As she said, it was her faith in God that made all the difference in the world. It's so sad, my friends, to see people walk away from their faith, because it can impact our lives in such a dramatic and wonderful way. And that's what Jesus is saying. Be careful with your faith and treat it as a treasure, because it can do wonderful, wonderful things in our life. God bless you.